Go for it.
All right, so this is the first official episode of what we are calling the hot seat, although actually we had a hot seat last week. So second official episode of the hot seat.
The hot seat.
So we'll have to get some theme music or an intro. So yeah, Christina and I, for the next about 15, 20, 30 minutes, are going to just be ripping on a topic that we find really interesting to our solopreneur lives, our businesses, One Woman Shop in particular. And today's topic, we are talking about Thrive, which I have the book in front of me, but I took the cover off. So I'll just hold the cover up. So this came about a couple months ago when we were planning for our first book club pick for One Woman Shop, our OWS book club. And we put a poll up, and one of the books chosen was Thrive. And I was kind of pulling for it because it was probably about 2 years ago when it was published. Ariana Huffington was a guest on Marie Forleo's Marie TV. And that day I pre-ordered the book because I was like, I got to read this book. But unfortunately, it sat on my shelf far too long unread. So this was the perfect time to read it as I really got into solopreneurship. So the full title is really The Third Metric to Redefining Success and Creating a Life of Well-Being, Wisdom, and Wonder. And so obviously that alone interested me, but particularly about where I was this spring in my solopreneur biz. So then I'll let Christina kind of tell how she became slowly obsessed with it.
So obsessed. So when Sarah suggested the idea for the OWS book club, I was like, that is awesome. Have so much fun. Because I always see reading. I just hate having reading be an obligation for me. And I like to read just trashy books. And I guess I'm always working all day. I just want it to be a release. I don't want it to feel like an obligation. But I kind of slowly started reading it just bit by bit. And I have become more and more obsessed. And I posted on my Facebook, I think I'm an Ariana groupie now. But it just, I don't know if you guys have ever read a book and you're like, this was written for me, and it was written for me right now at this point in my life. So then I was like, Sarah, we have to talk about this on our kind of first ever Flab hot seat. So we have a bajillion things we could talk about with the book, but there are going to be some spoiler alerts, so warning on that. And we're just going to kind of chat a little bit about how it connects to our lives as solopreneurs and specifically things we're doing with One Woman Shop. So, Sarah, I am curious, put you right on the hot seat, about your kind of biggest takeaways or biggest takeaway from the book.
Well, I think, the book's really split into 4 parts, which are well-being, wisdom, wonder, and giving. And the whole idea behind it is that Ariana kind of hit a point in her life where she literally collapsed of exhaustion, of stress, of everything going on. And so she looked at kind of how success was defined, and a lot of it was money and power. And this is her way of saying that there's got to be this third metric to success. And then there's those 4 elements of it. So I was laughing because I think you could actually read each section of the book, the well-being, the wisdom, the wonder, and the giving, as their own book and have a journal of takeaways. But to me, one of the biggest things was really stepping back from letting others define success for me and taking a look at the things she shared and basically pulling my own meaning out of them and how I can use that to kind of guide what I'm doing with my solo business, what we're doing with One Woman Shop, what I'm doing with my relationships outside of business, personal stuff, and how I'm taking care of myself, and really how taking care of yourself is taking care of others, because you can only be at your best when you put yourself first. So that was, that's like a million takeaways in itself, but that's like really what resonated with me the most. And Christina, I know you probably feel the same with a million takeaways. So do you have something in mind that you want to pull out?
Well, I was just going to say, so Sarah and I made a bunch of notes before we got on here. And one of the biggest things was this point that I think it's really easy to say, well, we as solopreneurs and we as One Woman Shops chose to step away from like the corporate, climbing the corporate ladder, So we are automatically living a third metric life of wisdom, well-being, wonder, and giving. But I think that there's also a ton of pitfalls within the solopreneur life, and we joke about it, but it's also pretty serious. We have a post on this site, you know you're a solopreneur when, and it's like you forget to eat lunch, and you don't get enough sleep, and your maybe workouts get pushed to the wayside. And so, we joke about it because it's funny and it's something we all relate with, but I also think it's, like we said, it's important. And this is like Sarah, I know for you, sleep is something that's been a huge thing you've been working on. And for me, meditating has been something that I've been really trying to get as part of my everyday life. But I definitely just want to drive home that point that just because you're a solopreneur doesn't mean you're automatically in this third metric life. It's still a lot of work. And then I guess another point related to that is that I'm not particularly, I'm not obsessed with money or with, it's just, I don't need to make billions of dollars or millions of dollars, but I think that my kind of personal pitfall in terms of living a third metric life is this, what's next? We sold a bundle. We sold 157 bundles. Okay, what now? Where do we go? How do we compete with that? And so kind of trying to always outdo ourselves. So I think that that's one thing that I need to be aware of in my life.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. And so one of the things that, when we were really pushing through the bundle last week, Christina, we talk a lot about, we pulled out from the book that, the first thing to go is taking care of yourself. So,
yeah.
Tell me a little bit about how you kind of saw that happen to you, because I know it definitely happened for me.
Yeah. I think that one thing that I have been doing well, and I can only brag about this because it has not been like this the rest of my life, but I always joke, I'm one of those obnoxious people that I used to hate that is I love going to the gym. And so every time I tell this to my roommate, I'm I'm going to go to the gym. I am so excited. Do you hate me? I hate me a little bit. And, but I think that one thing that I did do right during bundle week, as we called it, was I was no matter what, I'm going to the gym. And so just kind of holding firm on that because I know it makes me feel good. It's interesting because she doesn't really talk about exercise in the book, but for me, that's a huge thing that brings me a lot of sanity. But do you want to talk? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think I almost feel ridiculous talking about it because it seems so cliche, I need to exercise, I need to meditate, and I need to eat and sleep, right? And you're just well, yeah, everybody needs those. Everybody says that. But when we're not doing it, it's such a big difference. For me, sleep is essential, and it's the first thing to go because if I'm thinking about something, I'm up at night. If I'm thinking about something, I'm up in the morning. I feel I wake up and I feel I didn't really sleep, especially when I'm dreaming about the bundle or dreaming about whatever's going on.
Literally dreaming about the bundle. Too.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, exercise is a second thing because it's so easy to, when you have that feeling of I still need to be working on something or there's so much to do and I'm never going to get it done. You're kind of how can I fit 45 minutes into my day to exercise? Sometimes it's how can I even find 5 minutes to meditate? So I know that you've been really strict about meditating for the last couple of months. What do you tell yourself when you have that moment where you're I just don't have any extra time in my day. How am I supposed to get this stuff in?
So I tell myself two things. One is I love this quote, and it's about meditation, but I think if meditation doesn't resonate with you, then, replace meditation with whatever. And so basically the quote is, if you don't have 20 minutes to meditate for an hour. And it's basically this idea that exactly the times when you don't have time is exactly when you need to dedicate the time. And I also tell myself what I tell my roommate all the time, which is you might be going to the gym for, let's say, 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and you might be I just wasted 30 minutes or 45 minutes. But think about how productive and clear your mind is after you come back from the gym. And I'm the things that were taking you an hour and a half now take you 30 minutes. And there you go. You instantly, in one day, earned your time back. And so I think that's my kind of message to myself. But I'm curious what you tell yourself when you're I need to get my sleep in, which I know you.
Well,
your monthly
Your
goals.
point there is really good because it's so easy to be on the outside looking in and say, like, you would be so much more productive if you got out and exercised, or if you took that walk, if you meditated, if you sat in the bathtub for half an hour, like whatever it is that you need to do to kind of clear your mind. It is so easy from the outside looking in to be like, that's what you need. And then you'll be, because I know that from experience, writing a blog post can take me 3 hours or it can take me half an hour. And it all depends on where my mind is at. For me, I don't, my issue really is that I don't tell myself anything reinforcing when it comes to sleeping, except that I know that I will get sick if I let it go on too long. And I just know that that's my body's way of telling me, like, you know, you can't push yourself further because I'm going to stop you. And I hate getting to that point because I know it's my fault. So that's usually what keeps me from pushing a little bit further, where I'm like, well, I could stay up till 2 a.m. and get all this done, or I could go to bed at 11 and get 7 hours of sleep. And oftentimes that just becomes so much more important. So yeah, but I want to jump right into this because this is how I feel all the time. This was something directly from the book, and I want to get your take on it. So it's a quote that she shares from, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but I think it's Ian Thomas. He says, and every day the world will drag you by the hand yelling, this is important, and this is important, and this is important. You need to worry about this, and this, and this. And each day it's up to you to yank your hand back, put it on your heart, and say, no, this is what's important. And I know she's talking very much about well-being, but this is so true about everything in your life, bringing it back to realizing what's important. But what resonated with you when it comes to that?
It's so funny because I know you and I have this Google Doc, and we're both looking at it, we're both writing down quotes, and then we add comments. I'm like, oh my God, that's so funny. I highlighted that too, which isn't saying much because we probably both highlight, like we said, like the whole book. So of course we're going to highlight the same stuff. I definitely highlighted that section. I don't know. I just feel like they said it. The quote is so good and so powerful. I'm not sure I have much to add. But I do think that, you know, you and I are working on revamping this productivity e-course, and it's not even fair at this point to call it a productivity e-course because it's so much more than that. But a huge thing we talked about is saying no. And if you're not saying no, this is so cheesy, get ready. If you're not saying no, you have no time to say yes. But it's so true. Like if you are saying yes to everything, you know, you're going to be completely spread thin and you're going to be stressed out. But
that's where
back to you.
That's where I think that we get nervous to say certain things because we're afraid, like, this is cliche, this is kind of dumb, but that's exactly it, is that, you know, when you say no, you're saying yes to something else that is more important. And it is, even though we know that, you have to constantly remind yourself of that. And I'm a big proponent of having Post-it notes all over my computer monitor for things like that. So yeah.
I think it's interesting because as you and I have gone through this book kind of together, you multiple steps ahead of me and me dragging behind, kicking and screaming and now enthusiastic. You know, we've seen, like, you and I have seen each other when we're sleep deprived, and it's not pretty. And we both had times where we're like, kind of snide comment, and then we're immediately like, sorry, really tired, like not the best side of me right now. And then, you know, we have times where I'll be like, I'm going to go to salsa class because salsa class makes me feel great. It makes me happy. It gets me exercise. I mean, to me, salsa is just one of the greatest things that I do these days. And I'm like, sometimes I'm like, oh, I shouldn't go to salsa. Like, I should be working. Like, I should be working on whatever that I need to send to Sarah. And then I think, I'm like, would Sarah want me to be like skipping salsa class? No, Sarah would want me to go and come back refreshed, right? Right, Sam?
Yeah, well, and I think that's a lot of it, is that, you know, if it were just up to us, we would make these decisions, but we're worried about how it's impacting other people, or we're worried about other people's reactions. And that's where it becomes really the issue, is remembering that. And I think if you want to grab one of the quotes you wrote down, because I think it had exactly to do with this, it was, you know, that basically we control the reins, even though a lot of times we don't feel that way.
Yeah, I think it's the one about the channel, right? That's the one you're talking about.
Yeah,
I love this quote, and I can apply this in like 30 different ways. But basically, Ariana talks, to bring it back to Ariana, we haven't said her name in so long. But Ariana talks a ton in the book about her mom, and her mom sounds like a baller. Basically, she dedicates the book to her mom, and she says, she lived a third metric life before third metric was a thing, before it had a name. And I love all of her stories about her mom. But one of her mom's quotes is, "Darling, just change the channel. You are in control of the clicker. Don't replay the same bad, scary movie." And so I think that we every day are like faced with just all this stuff coming at us. And so I related this back to actually a Marie TV episode who we've mentioned earlier today on this same blab. But this woman's like, "I just want to coast for a little bit. I'm so sick of all the self-improvement crap. It's coming at me from all angles. I'm so overwhelmed." And Marie, as she can do, she's very like direct but really nice. But she's just like, unsubscribe. Like, stop following that person on Twitter. Like, you are in control of the things that you're seeing. Not always. Like, you might walk by a billboard and you can't really help but look. But so much of the time we forget that we are in control of the things that are influencing us in our lives. And if I can just take it to one more thing, which is about another book. I love this book. It's called 10% Happier, and it's also about meditation. And it's about a news anchor who basically had a total meltdown on TV. But one thing he says that just completely stuck out to me in the book is he says whenever he starts doing these brain spirals, just mind spiraling out of control, and I think this happens in our business life, in our personal life, he says, "Is this helpful?" And that to me is like the 3 words that I use all the time now. I stop and I'm like, "Is this helpful?" Do you ever use that?
Interesting. No, I haven't. I'm like making a note of that book because I'm like, I need to read that book. Well, to go back, I have like 1,000 things based off of what you just said. First, that the way she talked about her mom, definitely reminds me of like thinking about my grandma. Both my grandma that passed as well as my nonna who's still alive, and both of them, like, I do see that where it's so much easier to look at their lives and say they're living a third metric life. And I have to wonder if it's because they don't have the noise. They don't have the emails, the websites, they don't have Facebook, they don't have social media. So it's like, I think a lot of the way we live is obviously influenced by just the technology that surrounds us. And that's why Ariana talks so much about unplugging and detoxing and getting away from it. So that's certainly part of it. When you look at other generations, how I just think they didn't have the noise. And I do wonder, them living through the time now, like, how it would be different. But then with the is this helpful? It's a lot of times I know I'm overthinking something, but part of me wonders, well, is this am I overthinking this, or is it something that really does deserve the thought? And I know that a lot of that is influenced by my mental state at the time. If I'm overwhelmed, if I'm tired, if I'm hungry, I'm a human being. But a lot of times it is like, is this just me being type A, or is this actually something that will impact my business? And I'm trying to remember what I just read. Oh, it was actually we're reading Girl Boss now for OWS Book Club. And she mentions how at the time she made every little decision and really thought it out. And she doesn't regret that at all, because now she's like, it was those little things that I thought I might be thinking about too much that actually got me to the place I'm at. So, there's like two sides to the coin, but I think a lot of it just comes back to making sure that we are in a place where we can make decisions, where we can say, is this helpful, and make a logical, decision based off of that.
I think that's a really interesting point, and I think I totally see that with you and I, is sometimes I think we're on different ends of the spectrum, and I'm like, let's go, giddy up, like, let's move forward, and you're like, I have thoughts and concerns, and we really need to think it through. And I think that I'm absolutely learning from you that, like, okay, maybe it's not about making a super quick snap decision. And, it's about probably meeting in the middle. I think that for me, that is this helpful thing has been helpful when it's like the hour of not problem solving, not thinking through different elements, just obsessing. Like, I don't know about you, but I'll like have fights in my mind with a person that I'm fighting with, and I'll be like, I'll play their side, I'll play my side, and it's just this ridiculously obsessive, time-consuming behavior that doesn't really get me anything. And so I feel like that's the fine line of when it's helpful to be thinking through everything and when it's just like obsessive.
Yeah, exactly. When it's really holding you back, or when it is actually protecting you, or when it is just holding you back, and it's just a form of procrastination, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So we could definitely talk for like 2 more hours.
Yeah, we should. But I just want to bring up one more thing.
Yeah.
And that was her quote, because when you wrote this down, I was just like, yes, yes, and yes. And that was her quote, that resentment is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. And I want to know why you wrote that down, because I obviously know why I wrote that down. But I just like, that is such a powerful statement. And again, I think she was quoting somebody else. But if you could tell me like kind of what made you highlight that.
I love that. And as you and I chatted about, I say it to people all the time. I think I've just kind of, I'm definitely not perfect at this, but I've just kind of been like, there's so many times where I want to be like, I'm just going to like hold it against them. They'll all see. And then I'm like, I don't care. Literally the only person this is hurting is me. Like they probably don't know I'm upset. They probably don't give a crap that I'm upset. And if I'm not going to address it in a productive way and I'm just going to hold on to it, this is ridiculous. And this is, like you said, going to like eat me from the inside. But yeah, what about you? Why did you write it down?
Well, same thing in terms of, in a lot of personal relationships where it's like, I am certainly a grudge holder. I seem to only remember the bad things. It's like, why? But in so many situations, it is just prolonged stress on my part. And once I get past it, things are fine. And then the other side of that is, if it really does matter to me, it's just a sign that I need to communicate that. And I like to be really upfront and really open if something is bothering me. And I know I make a lot of people that don't like confrontation. I make them uncomfortable. But usually it's just like, hey, I want to talk this out so that we can like just get past this. But then the other time I see this really applying is when we do fall into the comparison trap when it comes to being solopreneurs. And I wouldn't call it as strong of a resentment as it might be with somebody that has actually done something that would cause you to be resentful or have a grudge. But it's more of that comparison. Why can't I be where they are? Why do they deserve that? Why did they get this? That's where I see it as, you can spend all your time looking at them and wishing you were there or wondering what got them there, or you can spend that time getting yourself there.
Yes. And I think that's really interesting you say that, because I just started reading Girl Boss last night, and she talks about that. One of the first things she talks about is role models. And she's like, I don't want to be a role model. She says, see if I can remember this quote, if you're spending all your time looking up, as in looking up to the pedestal, it's going to keep you down. And I loved that. Because you and I, we have people that are in the online business world, and we're like, God, they're so cool. Why are they so much cooler than us? And I think, we constantly work on trying to channel that effectively and not let it get us down. And another thing I just want to, not related, but related to the book, a quote that I love, 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 and I have like 20 blog posts that I want to work on based on this. We might as well live life as if it's rigged in our favor. And so the people that I see in my lives who live like that, who are like, things are going to work out. Like if you get a rejection from a guest post, okay, like just wasn't the right time for them, moving on, like we just talked about with Amanda Berlin.
Yep.
And I think it's really interesting. So one example of this that you and I have talked about is from the Solopreneur Success Bundle. And we had some tech issues when we were running the bundle, and we had some people who would email us and they would say, thank you so much for this amazing bundle. I cannot believe that it's so much value packed into $99. Thank you. Also, I have a tech issue. I'm wondering if you can help me. And then we had people who were like, oh, I cannot believe that this tech issue is going on. And they just seemed really mad at us. They seemed mad at Sendal, and they just seemed mad at the world. And so I think that, you and I discussed, I think the first set of people seem to be living life like it's rigged in their favor. Like the tech issue has nothing to do with them. It's just a minor inconvenience that they deal with. Whereas other people, it seems like a personal affront to them. So that's a huge takeaway I got from the book as well.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I've been listening a lot to Elizabeth Gilbert's Magic Lessons podcast. And one of the guests she had on was, she just told her, you know, you need to start feeling entitled. And everybody uses entitled like it's a really derogatory term or like you're selfish for saying it. But it's exactly that thought of thinking that life is rigged in your favor. You are entitled. You do the work. You are entitled to earn. So I totally agree with that. So are you cool if I kind of wrap up with one of the last quotes from the book, and then you can kind of ask a question that hopefully we'll get some answers to later. So it's, you know, this is, I guess, that spoiler alert, but and I don't even know if we were going to share the same quote here, because this is actually from the epilogue, because it's just like the perfect wrap up here, in my opinion, where she says, "But remember that while the world provides plenty of insistent, flashing, high-volume signals directing us to make more money and climb higher up the ladder, there are almost no worldly signals reminding us to stay connected to the essence of who we are, to take care of ourselves along the way, to reach out to others, to pause, to wonder, and to connect to that place from which everything is possible." So I absolutely love that. Like, you just keep reminding yourself that these things need to exist.
I love it. I love it. It's so this book is so, in so many ways, it's like very woo-woo and like meditation and sleep and all that, but like it's all extremely practical, and it's all actionable. And we always use the word actionable, but I don't know, it all is. It might be woo-woo, but it's also actionable. So clearly we both are a little bit obsessed. And then the last question for you guys as you're listening, and maybe you've read the book, maybe you haven't, but curious about this. So if you've read the book, which part makes you think, I'm going to go do that right away? So I know for me, it was meditating. And for Sarah, you have one.
Sleep.
Sleep. I know it. But for you guys listening, you know, I hope you got some good takeaways. And definitely feel free to write about it in the Facebook group, or if you're not a member, tweet us. Just chat with us about it, because we love talking about Thrive, obviously.
Yeah, and we'll be back next Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. where Christina is in Guatemala. We're Sarah and Christina from One Woman Shop. We probably should have opened that. So we'll be hosting the hot seat every Wednesday, 15 to 30-minute conversations. We'd love to hear your ideas for topics if you want to hear us riff on something, and we're always open to having some guests take our seats too.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Bye.